Smolsky. Welcome to the MacIver Report. It is May 30th, 2025. I am the content director for the MacIver Institute, and I am joined by
Michael Lucas, policy analyst.
Just the two of us as always. We're going to go through the top stories of the week. Not a lot going on this week because it was Memorial Day. So we're going to just start by talking about the state budget because there was a little bit of movement on the budget this week. We had the legislative leaders are currently conducting budget negotiations with Governor Evers. I actually saw him on Wednesday coming back from their meeting. They had apparently been with him for about 2 hours. We don't really know what's going on. You know, it's all closed doors negotiations, but we know that Republicans are determined to get a tax cut, which Governor Evers will inevitably run on for his reelection campaign. So. Yeah. Looking forward to that. We also had Joint Finance Committee. So they're conducting, they also conducted their second executive hearing on the budget yesterday, May 29th. So they're going through the budget piece by piece and very slowly, though. They aren't doing anything significant yet because they're trying to get a deal with Governor Evers on what the budget's going to look like. So far, we've just done a standard budget adjustment. We've decided where the starting point is. They decide they're going to start at about $100 billion as their starting line because they do incremental budgeting, which I've talked endlessly about why that's a bad idea and why we need to do zero-based budgeting, which means starting at zero. But so they did their standard budget adjustment, and then they tackled some of the least controversial spending areas of the budget. Including employee trust funds and safety and professional services. The reason why these aren't so controversial is there isn't a lot of policy in them, and it doesn't technically spend state taxpayer money. When they're making their adjustments, they're just determining how much new program revenue is going to come into them, and how much federal aid, things like that. So it still affects the bottom line, the total spending. It does not affect, but none of that money comes directly out of state income taxes. I'm tracking the budget, everything they do this time around. That top line, current budget, which ends on June 30th, that's how they calculated that, how much we're spending the current budget. That's just the second year of the budget, base year doubled. So total spending by their math in the current budget is $98.9 billion. And 42.8 of that comes from GPR. That's your state taxpayer dollars. Next line, those are the changes. That includes that standard budget adjustment where they make all their all the expense. They include all the expenses that they have no control over, and it also includes the few changes that they've made so far with employee trust funds and safety and professional services. So then you could see the running total. So currently they are anticipating that the next budget over the next 2 years will spend $43 billion of GPR and over $100 billion of all funds. So we've crossed that $100 billion threshold officially. And they're just going to keep on adding to it. Like I said, none of these items are like big controversial issues. None of them are the things that really add expense to the budget. So we're just going to watch that number keep ticking up over the next few weeks as they hammer out deals with Evers, and we'll keep talking about it.
Yeah.
So, but now we're going to get into the really exciting news of the week or the month, the Big Beautiful Bill Explained. And Mike has put together this presentation. He'll walk us through it because, to be perfectly honest, there isn't a lot of information about this out there. I mean, it's hard to find, MacIver, we thrive on baseline numbers. We love to show you the raw data, just lay out all the cards on the table. This is how much this is costing, this is how much we're paying now, and all that's not easy to find with the Big Beautiful Bill or most government programs.
Yeah.
So walk us through what you got here, Mike.
All right. Okay. So a few days ago, Ron Johnson went on Tucker Carlson's show to talk about this, and I think Johnson did a great job. He actually gave you those top-line figures, total expenses, total revenues, what's the deficit.
Made our job easy.
Stuff, right? And other people have been saying this too, but if you spend just 10 minutes, searching Google trying to figure out what's the total revenue and what's the total expenditures of this budget, you get nothing. You plug it into AI, and AI doesn't know either because AI can't do math. So, like, was on X, I asked Grok, hey, what's total revenue? And it could not tell me. All it told me was, oh, well, here's the tax expenditures, and here's the reduction in this line item, and
Let me look
utterly
at yeah.
useless.
Yeah, so
in
if you're
trying to figure out.
what does Grok do? It says, "Well, I checked Fox News and CNN and ABC News for you, and I don't have an answer."
Yeah. And same thing with other articles. So there are some good articles that go through, what this bill does, like, Tax Foundation, I pull from them. Cato has some good articles. Heritage has some good articles. You can find them, right? But pretty much all of them are leaving out total revenue and total expenditures. So I figured it out. I found the ultimate source.
All right.
And this is what we got.
All right, so let's see. We got total inflows and outlays.
All right. So this slide and the next two. These images are pulled from the CRS, the Congressional Research Service. This is part of the Congressional Budget Office. And the Congressional Budget Office, whenever they get a fiscal bill, will do an analysis. Okay? And they will actually tell you total revenues and total expenditures. So inflows are revenues. In the chart, it says revenues. Those are tax revenues, fees, things like that. And then there's the debt, which they call deficit, which is also part of inflow. So any money that the government is getting is its revenue. They call it inflows so as not to confuse it with tax revenue. And then there's outflows, which are the expenditures. Okay. So here's the top line figure. So inflows, a little over 5 trillion. Sorry.
7 trillion.
Revenue, 5 trillion, deficit 2 trillion for total inflows of 7.1 trillion.
Oh my gosh, what's two?
So that's the deficit is a little less than half of tax receipts, right? Because
Wow.
2 into 5 is whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. So I mean, you're
40%
talking like
something like, or actually 40% exactly, right? Because you just double it, 10 and 4. So the deficit is 40% of revenues.
40%. Okay,
Yeah, so-
thank you. I was trying to figure out that number in my head.
So 40% of what the government would spend,
Is being
I've
borrowed.
heard that it's dead, right?
Yeah.
Is borrowed
Wow.
money, right? So they're going to issue bonds. The Fed's going to buy some of those bonds and monetize it, blah, blah, blah. And that's what's going to make up the difference between total receipts and total expenditures, the difference between the inflows and the outlays. Then down to total outlays, broken down into 3 parts. You have your mandatory spending, which is your entitlements. That's Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have discretionary, which is the stuff that is actually decided and changed every year. That's all of your departments.
Mm-hmm.
That's DOD, that's HUD, whatever, everything. Okay. The mandatory spending, it's written into law that if you qualify for this entitlement, you will receive this benefit. And so that the mandatory spending just goes up automatically. Okay, so that's not actually decided during these, when these budget bills are put out there. So total outlays mandatory, then you have discretionary, then you have your interest payments. Interest payments are paying the interest on the outstanding debt. We got $36 trillion in debt. Interest rates are quite high. I think I heard that the yield on the 20-year bond, which is probably the most, the biggest, most, actually it's not the most common bond. I think usually Treasury bonds that are purchased are like 1 or 2 years or less than that, 6 months. But the yield on the 20-year bond is, I want to say it was like 5%.
Wow.
Pretty much almost at like an historic high.
Yeah.
So bond markets are going crazy. And something that probably everyone has heard is that the interest payments on the debt are now greater than military spending. Everything you spend on the DOD is now been surpassed
Well,
just by paying down the debt.
Well, it looks like we got a balanced budget, though.
Looks like you have a balanced budget.
Better than balanced. We got a surplus.
So here's the thing, right? That the budget always has to balance.
Yeah.
Right? You can't. If you're spending $7 trillion, you had to have gotten the $7 trillion from somewhere. Okay? And you'll notice that total inflows and total outlays don't add up. Right, inflows are 7.1 trillion, outlays are 6.9.
Yeah,
that's due to rounding in this chart.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So it's a perfectly balanced budget. That's
so
just there is no surplus.
Yeah. So departments are rounding, the CBO is rounding, and blah blah blah.
Okay.
They'll add up. Okay. You can't spend money that you don't have.
Well, it's good to know that they also aren't borrowing. Was it $150 billion? As safety, just to have around. So.
Yeah. So budget's always balanced,
Uh-huh.
But obviously it's not really balanced because your tax receipts, right, your revenues aren't equal to your spending.
Okay.
You want your tax revenues, your receipts to be equal to your outlays. Okay, because you don't want to take on additional debt. We have a huge amount of debt. I don't know what it is. It's more than 100% of our GDP, like 110, 15% of our GDP, something like that.
All right, so there's a big problem here.
Yes.
So Social Security and Medicare, well, Social Security.
Yeah.
Social Security fund. That's not a, hand-to-mouth situation.
No.
There's supposed to be there should be a $1.5 billion, or was it, $1.5 trillion segregated fund in the inflows that money's coming from. It's not supposed to be coming from any current taxes. It's supposed to be sitting around and just being dispersed, right?
Yeah. And so if you look at the graph, if you want to know where the deficit is coming from, why is it that we're borrowing $2 trillion in just 1 year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So look at that bottom rectangle. Look at Social Security. Like you said, it's 1.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Medicare, or trillion, sorry. Look at Medicare, it's 935 billion. Those are supposed to be funded by payroll taxes. Look at the rectangle above. What's payroll taxes? 1.7. There's your there's where your deficit's coming from.
Well, payroll taxes and the segregated account where all that Social Security money was supposedly being deposited.
Yeah. And interestingly, it's probably in health, under outlays, health, it's that white box, 800 billion.
Okay.
Notice that Medicaid is not on here, right?
Well,
Medicaid is also an entitlement, should be part of mandatory spending, and I think that's what health is.
Yeah.
But there's probably other things.
Well, so Medicaid actually is discretionary. I mean, they could determine.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I mean that hasn't been promised. You don't pay a special tax for that. Or,
yeah, actually, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So. That's where the deficit comes from. It comes from entitlement spending. This has been true for many, many years now. I don't know how much, but if you look at the a pie chart of total government outlays, total spending,
now
50% of it is entitlements.
Yeah, and
Medicare,
so
Medicaid, Social Security.
This is our current budget right now. This isn't what they just passed. This is not the big beautiful bill.
This is the projected inflows and outlays for the one big beautiful bill.
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah. So there's an overview of projected fiscal year 2025 federal budget.
All right.
Yeah.
So then we got...
And so the shading too, so if you go back one, so the color shading is showing you how spending is increasing or decreasing relative to the current budget.
Oh, okay.
Right? So the more blue it is, the greater the increase. And then the more brown it is, the greater the decrease.
What are we cutting down there?
So for expenses, for outlays, we are cutting other mandatory spending. Who knows what that is? You can probably find it in the giant CBO report.
Mm-hmm.
And then education, training, employment, and social services. So that's really $51 billion. That's like a cut to, Department of Education.
Okay.
Cutting back on grants or just direct transfers to university systems, things like that. Everything else, though, that is blue is going up. Okay. And then this one. So this is just a breakdown of the inflow. So all of the receipts,
Okay.
the revenue. So inflows is revenues plus the deficit, which is the borrowing, right? So tax receipts plus loans plus debt.
Again, I'd like to point out in this revenue breakdown, there is no segregated account from which they are withdrawing the Social Security payments.
Yes, yeah, and Social Security payments are have to go into the Social Security trust, but they don't have to stay there.
Yeah.
That's the kicker there. So what do we have? So revenues, taxes, and fees. That's all stuff that's coming directly out of your paycheck or out of your pocket. Sales tax, excise tax, income tax, corporate tax, blah blah blah. $5.1 trillion. So that's really how much money the federal government is collecting, right? Their spending should be equal to their receipts.
Okay.
Then below that we have deficit, that's your borrowing, and then this other category which they call undistributed. I think it's undistributed offsetting receipts. No idea what that is, to be honest with you.
Okay.
But the borrowing $1.9 trillion, which makes a deficit $2 trillion. So.
All right. So, question: individual income taxes.
Yeah, that's
It's
the bulk of their tax receipts,
yeah.
about half.
It's increasing, but we're talking about a big tax cut. So, is this projecting that we will collect more taxes because we're cutting the rate?
That could be baked into this.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is the difficult thing about this one big beautiful bill, right? Like
Omnibus bills are horrible.
are taxes being cut and raised in other places, so you get a net increase in taxes? I'm not sure. Tariffs. I mean, I have no idea.
Well, yeah, I mean,
no idea where this changes.
Last week, you and I had that big conversation about how they account for tax cuts in a government budget, how they consider it to be an expense,
yes,
rather than a loss of revenue. So,
which I absolutely hate. But if you go back one slide, they actually show that. See, it says tax expenditures on the left. 1.95 billion or 1.9 trillion. See that?
Okay.
Tax expenditures. So that's counted as an expense because they're decreasing taxes.
Yeah. Ugh.
So.
All right. So we got our inflows breakdown. We got our so here's our outflows.
And then
outlays.
Outlays. You can see mandatory. So it's 4.1 trillion of that total 7 trillion. So that's more than half. That's 55-60%, whatever it is. It's the entitlements. That's what's driving all of this. My opinion, federal government does not need to be doing 99% of the things it's doing. Literally 99%. National defense, nothing else. Like that's my opinion. And even that last 1% national defense, that's up for debate. Why not just join a military alliance? I mean, where does Army come from? It comes from the state militias, from the National Guards, which are run by the states. So
because no one ever wants to pay for anything themselves. So
yes,
we've got a system of National Guards, but they're all funded by the federal government.
Yeah, but you keep all your discretionary spending. You get rid of the entitlements, that mandatory spending, and you have a perfectly healthy, fiscally healthy federal government.
Yeah. We nitpick over these programs too. But yeah, I mean, just the concept, that we'll just keep it on the macro level today. Just, not is the spending good or bad spending, but is it feasible? Is it even possible to keep doing this?
It's, you can go for a long, long time. We have been going for a long, long time. Just consider this. I think it was in 2016. 2016, the national debt reached 20 trillion. And since then, which is, 8-9 years, it has almost doubled. Mm-hmm. Another 4 trillion, and we doubled in less than 10 years. And it's going, if this continues, it's going to increase geometrically. That's going to increase geometrically. Inflation's going to increase geometrically. It already is. It always is. and you're not going to have people willing to finance this debt anymore. It's sort of reaching that point now with bond markets, the secondary bond market, right? Not buying government debt and the yields, the interest rates on those bonds going up. I'm just saying no one wants to touch this because we don't trust that the federal government's actually going to pay us back in real terms, right? It's not actually going to be a net benefit for us to buy government debt because we think you're just going to inflate whatever gain we might have made out of existence.
Oh yeah, I got you. Yeah,
Right?
when inflation is 20% and your interest rate is 5, why are you going to buy a bond?
And the reason I think that is that the deficit is growing and growing and growing. I don't know that this is the largest deficit we've ever had, but it's up there.
Well,
I can't remember what Ron Johnson said, but it's excepting for 2020, 2021. That was probably the largest deficit year we had, right? But this is very close.
Yeah. Well, I probably should have put this on a slide, but you and I were talking this week about how much of our economy is tied to government spending.
Yes.
And we were playing around with this with ChatGPT helping us with the research, not the math. But when you consider everybody that works for the government, direct income.
Yeah, I think it's 3 million government employees, which does not include,
well, that's just federal
contractors and
or is that all
federal and state?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, you take everybody that works for the government, then you add on all the contracts, people that rely on the government for their sales, and then you look at all the nonprofits and organizations that depend on the government for grants, all the educational institutions that take federal money, take government money, and then you consider all the suppliers for all that government activity. Down to things like buying light bulbs for the school building. That all counts as government spending, government GDP.
Yeah.
You get up to, you quickly get up to between like 40 and 45% of our economy is completely driven by government spending.
Yeah.
And as Michael, as you just walked us through here, that's government spending is being driven by borrowing.
Yes.
So our entire standard of living in this country right now is completely based off of our government's ability to borrow money. It is all debt based. And that's at some point. At some point, that's going to come to an end, a cataclysmic end.
Yes.
It's going to collapse.
Yes.
And there is, it's good to talk about this. It's good that Ron Johnson and Rand Paul are out there and they are, sounding the alarm bells about this. Is it possible to actually do something constructive and preventative of that impending disaster? Because I don't think there is, to do anything meaningful.
Yeah.
Because we can't even do the meaningless stuff.
Right.
Look at the controversy right now over Medicaid. All those billions of dollars, that we're talking, that it was like $100 billion over 10 years. That's just waste, fraud, and abuse. That's not taking anyone's benefits away. It's just taking all, fixing all the inefficiencies and all the waste in the system, not affecting anybody's care or quality or quantity or anything like that. And the left is using that as a political opportunity to fire people up and to score political points.
Yes.
They are hitting the brakes. So that's something that doesn't hurt anybody. It only helps everyone. And even then, we can't do it.
Yeah. I want to look up how much of the would you say 40% of our economy is
it was at least it was between 40 and 45%, I believe.
Yeah, that would make sense if you're including all those contractors,
all layers of government, all the contracts. Yeah.
And I think just federal spending on its own is somewhere around 30. It's 30% or more. I want to say it's 30 to 35% of GDP. Just
oh wow.
Just
yeah.
The
so
right? So we're
we're really at 50% at least then.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, because look at Wisconsin. Our road building industry. That's hundreds of billions of dollars. That's all government spending.
Yeah. Something else I wanted. Oh, so with the mandatory spending, this entitlements are going to break the United States. Because there is no check. It's not discretionary. It's written in the law. Someone's got to get stiffed. I'm getting stiffed.
Yeah.
That's a guarantee. Millennials, you're not getting anything.
Well, yeah.
You will never be able to collect Social Security. Just everyone needs to understand that now.
Well,
And frankly, there's a very good chance that Gen X doesn't get to collect either.
Well, and when we talk about, and the politicians that see this coming, that are talking about reforms to prevent that disaster from happening, they get crucified. No, you cannot touch it. You can't do anything to help it, to improve it. It is an untouchable problem.
Yeah.
And so, eventually, it's not going to be there. It's not going to be anybody's deliberate decision. It's going to be you take your Social Security check to the bank and it bounces. That's just going to be the end of the story, and nobody's going to be able to do anything about it because everybody's going to be broke.
Yeah. So if people understand that these entitlements you're not going to collect, which is, people your age and younger are, what, 30% of the population?
Yeah.
Something like that. If everyone just understands, you're not going to get it anyway, let's just cut you off. We're not going to promise that we pay out Social Security to you.
That would be, you're right. That would be, again, you'd have riots in the streets, but at least you could tell people, you're still paying FICA. You ain't getting FICA, though.
Yes.
You got to keep paying it, but you'll never collect a dime.
Yeah. And then once all the current beneficiaries or the people that are, close to being people who are 60 I think the cutoff should probably be 55. 55 years old, you're 10 years
at
from
55,
from
you're
retirement.
really screwed if you haven't put anything away.
Yeah, if you and
you take away Social Security and
but that seems
again you'd have riots in the streets.
We're not promising any of these entitlements to anyone age 55 or younger.
Yeah, how do you ramp it down?
And then once all the beneficiaries are gone, those programs are no more.
Well,
they got to be scrapped.
Yeah, it's a nice idea, but we all know
it's not going to happen.
Yeah, completely unworkable.
But that's what you would have to do. You get rid of that, and you can do everything else you want. Really, all you need, you just need to cut $2 trillion. Cut $2 trillion.
Yeah,
really
you're
easy,
right. Sure.
And you could.
So where we got to?
Get
So
rid of
$2
this,
trillion is our entire discretionary budget, right? So.
Yeah.
Let me go back. So discretionary. Yeah, so just cut out all discretionary funding and just pay for entitlements.
And then you have a balanced budget. I don't know that this is still true, but a few years ago, Rand Paul was saying this all the time. It's like if you cut the budget by 5% every year, you balance the budget in 5 years, right? It's really not very much, but that gets you, your $2 trillion. It's probably more now.
Yeah.
Or rather. Yeah.
All right, so hang on.
You just do it across the board and you can get there.
All right, so now you've got top line analysis.
Yeah, so this came from Tax Foundation. So they estimate, what the effects of the Big Beautiful Bill would be, and take it with a grain of salt. You take the Congressional Budget Office's projections with a grain of salt too. It's all forecasting based on some generalized equilibrium model.
How do you ask the question to get the answer you want?
Yeah, so but I find the Tax Foundation to be useful. So they say if passed, GDP would go up by 1%. GNP, which is just a different way of doing national income accounting, increases by 1%. Capital stock 0.2%. Seems like a rounding error to me. Pre-tax wages going up, okay, and that's because of the tax cuts. Hours worked, I'm not entirely sure what that means, but then the big number in the red, so the 10-year conventional deficit increase over the course of the next 10 fiscal years is $2.6 trillion. So I think what that's saying is, if this bill, they explained it in the article, I didn't read the whole thing, I just grabbed this picture, so go and check it out. But if this bill were to be, the fiscal bill, every year for the next 10 fiscal years, these, I guess, average increase in the deficit every year would be $2.6 trillion. So this first year, the deficit's going to increase by $2 trillion.
Okay.
But it's going to increase exponentially, or not geometrically, right? Because when you're borrowing money, right, you are paying interest on that debt. And the greater your interest payments become, the higher those yields are. So the more, those interest payments cost you. So your deficit's actually going to increase and increase and increase and increase. Even if you're, really only getting $2 trillion in borrowed funds, it's going to cost you $2.6 trillion instead of what it costs now, the $2.1 trillion, say, for example.
So what are we doing in this big, beautiful bill that is driving up expenses?
Yes. Let's go to the next slide.
All right.
I think I have an answer to that. Okay. Yeah, so here are the tax cuts, and these aren't all the tax cuts. This is just the income tax cuts. So you have the current tax brackets, right?
Oh my gosh, the poorest of the poor don't get a tax cut, but the richest of the rich do?
Yeah. And I don't remember what the cutoff is for the first tax bracket. It's whatever the standard deduction probably is, right? So I think it's like 0 to 15,000 or 0 to 12,000 or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So yeah. So the poorest of the poor aren't getting a, or rather, that would be. No, that'd be like the second bracket.
Well, you get all kinds of credits too.
There should be like a zero bracket, right, for whatever the standard deduction is.
Oh yeah,
right? Because the first however many thousands of dollars are income tax exempt.
Yeah, well, and it's having done this for a while and seeing like some of the social media analyses that jump out there, like, oh, if you make $100,000, that's how much you're paying in taxes. It's like, no, because they always seem to miss the fact that, yeah, you've got a deduction. You might make $100,000, but in the government's eyes, you make $85,000.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I guess if you're in the first tax bracket, yeah, no tax cut for you. But there's very few people in the lowest tax bracket. You're talking about part-time workers.
Yeah, and you're getting credits too that are like driving that down anyways.
When I was in community college, I was working 3 days a week at a pizza parlor, and like my gross annual income was like $12,000.
Yeah,
and that's including when I was working full time over summers and winters.
Yeah,
$12,000. So don't worry about that. The next few tax brackets, that's what you're interested in. Notice that tax bracket 6, no tax cut. So this is where the tax cuts are coming from. Is a reduction in the income tax bracket. I'm pretty sure this was the income tax bracket.
Okay.
By a few percent, cool.
Wait a minute, real quick. So, I mean, look, really rich people, they don't get like a paycheck like we do. So, I mean, it kind of changes how they get taxed. But let's say they did. Let's say you're a billionaire and you actually get it all in a weekly paycheck. You're paying 40% of that to the feds?
Yes.
Plus, you're paying FICA and your Medicare taxes.
Yeah.
Plus, you're paying your progressive state tax. You're paying over 50% easily of your income to taxes.
Which is why the rich do not generally choose to be compensated in the form of wages.
Yeah.
They choose to be compensated in other ways.
Stock.
Via a company car, which is tax exempt. You don't have to worry about it. Via benefits, like all of these things, right? So they'll probably choose like a stock option, right? Once their salary is above a certain level. And those stocks are going to pay dividends.
As opposed to be paying hundreds of millions of dollars just in income taxes on top of all the other taxes you pay every day.
Yeah. And if you're out, and with capital gains tax rates, I don't know what it is, 15%.
Well, it's like 30%.
Capital gains?
It's expensive. Yeah, I know, because I just got eminent domained on my on some of my property by the Wisconsin DOT.
Oh, federal capital gains.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I
got a couple. Supposedly, I've got like 2 or 3 years to take that money and buy new land with to avoid the capital gains tax. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if I just put it in my bank account, I think I have to hand 30% of it right back over to the government.
Got it. Yeah. So just a quick search here. It looks like the there's a brackets for capital gains too.
Uh-huh.
It goes from 0 to 20.
Oh, okay.
So 20, whatever it actually is. But even still, I'm
Well, if
fairly
it's-
certain it's less than 40%. So
yeah,
you're
right. It is
going to be
Yeah.
getting more of your money back if you're choosing to get paid in stocks, which you
yeah.
just do. So there's that. Income taxes. And then
new standard deduction.
changes the standard deduction.
Here we go.
Awesome. I
Wow.
love a $16,000 standard deduction. That would be sweet.
Oh, wow. Married file jointly is
That's huge. Yeah.
That is-
especially if one of you works.
yeah. That is big.
Yeah. So that's this didn't happen. This is what would have happened. But maybe they'll keep that in there.
Oh, this is one of the things that's on the chart.
This is one of the things.
Yeah,
That's
they're
proposed
talking
in
about.
the-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, so Johnson doesn't want this.
Oh yeah. Evil man. I'm kidding.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
Oh,
Senator. But that's how it's just super common political tactic. We're gonna sweeten the pot. Here's your tax cut. And by the way, we're going to tax you on the back end by printing all of this money, right? Because we're going to be spending more money than ever.
Yeah, you lose. So you lose this that extra $16,600 in inflation.
Yeah, so it really does not matter what the tax rates are. What's a good way to put this? Okay, you got a $5 trillion spending budget or a $7 trillion spending budget. Taxes are lower, a lot lower.
Yeah.
And the taxes are zero in the $7 trillion budget.
Now you're borrowing
right?
$7 trillion.
Okay. Which one do you choose? You choose the $5 trillion because the budget has to balance.
Yeah.
That money is going to be spent no matter what, and it's coming from somewhere, and it's always coming from you. Okay. If it's not coming from taxes, it's coming from the bond market. It's coming from inflation by the Fed, who's monetizing the debt.
Well, yeah,
The inflation is a hidden tax on you. It depreciates your dollar, and the borrowing that causes interest rates to go up. Interest rates go up together. They move up together and they move down together generally. And if you're trying to buy a house or finance a car or finance anything, you're going to have to pay a higher interest rate. It's coming out of your pocket. Always choose the budget with a lower spending amount.
Yeah.
It's always better for you. So this doesn't matter. So Johnson is correct to have rejected this because the spending is way out of control. But
Well, I'm
that's
glad
what
he's
was
talking. I'm glad
proposed.
he's talking about it. Somebody has to, and just be the torchbearer for. Because I mean, like we were saying earlier, this is going to end in complete cataclysm.
Mm-hmm.
The whole system's going to collapse. And when does it happen? That's the open question. I don't think you'll find too many people that are going to disagree and say, "Oh, no, we're just going to borrow forever."
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people out there like that, but in general, people just feel like we're just kicking the can down the road and we'll be dead by the time it happens. So who cares, right?
Yeah, there are things that states can do in this regard. So Texas is a good example of this. But if you want to protect, your citizens from inflation, Texas has laws in the book and I think Wyoming too. They have laws in the books that recognize gold and silver as legal tender.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right? You could do that, and if this whole thing goes blanks up, then then you can at least issue your own currency backed by gold and silver. Start using it now. The Constitution says that gold and silver shall be legal tender for all debts.
Yeah.
Right? For all transactions.
Yeah, get
That's
those,
in Article 1.
Yeah, those gold-backed bills, or where they're like the paper that's like got the gold coating on it.
Yeah. Another thing too, and I'm really thinking about this stuff a lot lately because that tax resistance project I was doing, but interposition / nullification, same thing. States, you come to the defense of your citizens, right? And, most people don't think this way. The United States, for me, is not my country. Wisconsin is my country. Okay?
Yeah.
California was my country.
Yeah.
I left. I immigrated here.
Yeah, we're
But
a union of
states-
separate states, which are countries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We're not provinces. Okay. We're not territories. We're free, independent, sovereign states. The state legislatures can interpose between their citizens and the federal government when it comes to, these taxes. When it comes to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, no one's going to do this.
Yeah.
Maybe in Texas they will. But you can just say, we're no longer going to allow the federal government to collect payroll taxes. We're going to collect that. Because what do the states have? The states have their own Social Security. They have their own Medicare, Medicaid. They have all of these things. Everything that the federal government does is already done at the state level.
Yeah.
Department of Education, right? Everything, right? Department of Transportation, like EPA, sort of like all of those regulations are already done at the state level. You don't need any of that stuff. So why allow your citizens to be double hit?
Well, when the states,
No one's going to do that.
Well, you know what? When they do, you'll know
they
the
eventually will.
Yeah,
They will.
You'll know the end is near. When one state starts doing it, then suddenly 3 and 4 and 5 more states are doing it, and it's becoming a stampede for the exits. Then you'll know we're at the end.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't know if there's anything after this.
No.
Okay.
This is going to be our final thing. So, big 5-year anniversary now. No, not COVID. Justice for George, St. George, St. George Floyd.
Yeah.
So, always got to remember. I mean, it's history now. I guess 5 years. So, remember that when George Floyd died in Minnesota, it didn't stay in Minnesota. There were race riots across the whole country.
Oh yeah.
And here in Madison, Wisconsin, we had this. We have State Street, nice quaint State Street. They completely looted the thing. It was filled with all these small independent businesses, and there's a columnist for the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and she's also a radio show host for TMJ 620 AM in Milwaukee as well. She was just kind of opining on Twitter recently, like, I was just on State Street. It used to be so filled with all these lovely, cute independent businesses, and now it's all corporate. What happened? Well, let's. I want to show you what happened. This is a quick After those riots, we went back and I went to the police department here in Madison, and I did an open records request. I said, these specific crimes happened during the riots on State Street. I want all of the videos, evidence that you collected to solve those crimes. So I got dozens and dozens of hours of video that they had pulled off of social media, off of newscasts, from private camcorders, and from their own police drones and surveillance systems. So we put together this half-hour documentary, One Night in Madison. So this was part of it, showing, some of the looting and stuff. This is all police evidence. So they had all of this. Here's another one from, we had a couple assault rifles were stolen out of a squad car. And they recovered them, fortunately. This is the guy that did it. He live streamed his whole day, Denzel Jackson. Mm-hmm. He was arrested. He pled guilty to everything. And who was his? Chris Taylor. She was, I think she was a representative at the time. She was really upset about this. She didn't understand where all these people were coming from who were committing these crimes. Well, Denzel Jackson, he's a local guy. And then she got appointed to be a judge in Dane County, and she presided over Denzel Jackson's case. I guess no spoilers. So, all right, here's another one. We got this guy, Brandon Encarnacion, bashing the squad car. Police drone caught him actually setting that police car on fire. Yeah. And guess what? Judge Chris Taylor presided over that case too. See,
and wasn't he like 20?
Something like that.
19?
Yeah, he got a signature bond, as everyone does, and he goes out and he robs a cannabis store while on signature bond. I wonder what happened to him.
Yeah.
And then we got our final one. This one's great too. Now we're starting to get more provocative, but it's hard to avoid.
We busting downtown, man. That's what I'm saying, bro. We finna get on that. Oh my mama, folks.
Look, I'm sick.
Oh fuck, look.
Look,
Folks, look. Oh my mama, folks can't. You feel me, folks? We downtown, folks. I put like $10 in your shit. We down there. Oh my mama, folks. Oh my mama, we hitting Best Buy, boy. Oh folks, boy, we down there.
We hit him Best Buy. Yeah, so so the video is just so incredible. Yeah. I mean, to get like that Denzel Jackson guy, he live streamed his whole day, like from the time he got into his car, like in Sun Prairie, driving downtown Madison, describing everything he's gonna do, all the people he's gonna beat up, all the stores he's going. I mean. Yeah. And then he goes and he's there. He's giving us a firsthand account. And then there's other people with camcorders, so we're able to supplement and get different angles of the police car. Somebody had their camcorder out, and actually you see Denzel actually pull the gun right out of the squad car and run off with it. So I mean, it's really intense. But yeah, go to our website, MacIverInstitute.com. You could watch the whole movie there. It's only a half hour long, but it'll give you the true story of what happened in Madison that night 5 years ago. So.
Oh yeah, good stuff.
And we'll keep sending out those sound bites, over the next few days to keep keep people talking and riled up, I guess.
Yeah.
But. Anyway, I think that takes us to the end of the show for today. You got anything you wanted to end with, Mike? Or?
No, that's it. Just keep an eye out for my timeline project, History of American Tax Resistance. It's coming soon, I promise. Just got to figure out a publication date.
Yeah, I got a great story coming out on Monday, too, about government cutting entitlement programs. But it's not anything like you think it is. So
yes, that's a good one.
It's not Trump's fault either. So that'll be a good one. Anyway, so hey, for the MacIver report, it's May 30th. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch up with you next week. Have a great weekend.